Welcome to the Podkey Summary of Whitby. Whitby is one of those places where almost every view comes with a backstory. You've got an abbey that helped shape English Christianity, a harbor that kept reinventing the town's economy, and a coastline packed with jet, fossils, and just enough gothic atmosphere to make Dracula feel completely at home. What ties it all together is reinvention. Whitby keeps changing its role without really losing its character, which is a pretty rare trick. The story really starts with Whitby Abbey, founded in 657 as an Anglo-Saxon double monastery for both men and women, led by Princess Hild as its first abbess. It wasn't just a religious site sitting dramatically on a cliff, it became a major center of learning, a royal burial place, and the setting for one of the best origin stories in English literature. That's Sedmond, the cowherd who, according to tradition, was transformed into the earliest known English poet. So right there, Whitby is part monastery, part classroom, part literary launchpad. Then in 664, the Synod of Whitby took place there. This was a major dispute in Northumbria over how to calculate the date of Easter, with Roman and Celtic traditions using different systems. The decision went with the Roman calculation, and that made Whitby a significant site in the development of English Christianity. It sounds technical, but it mattered, because a church trying to organize itself can't really have different regions celebrating major feasts on different dates. That first monastery was destroyed in Danish Viking raids sometime between 867 and 870, and the site stayed desolate for more than 2 centuries before a Benedictine monastery was founded after the Norman conquest. After that, Whitby's history starts to look like a series of working harbors layered on top of each other. Medieval herring and fishing fleets gave way to alum mining, shipbuilding, coal transport, whaling, tourism, and later marina and service industries. It wasn't a straight line upward, it was more like the town kept spotting the next thing the sea, or the coast, could do for it. Shipbuilding became a huge part of that identity. In 1790 and 1791, Whitby built 11,754 tons of shipping, which made it England's third largest shipbuilding center after London and Newcastle. That's a serious output for a town people, now often pictured mainly as scenic and atmospheric. Whaling was another big chapter, and also a brutal one. It peaked in 1814 when 8 Whitby ships caught 172 whales, and one vessel alone produced 230 tons of oil and 42 tons of whalebone from its catch. But like a lot of extractive industries, it hit the wall. Catches became uneconomic, gaslighting reduced demand for whale oil, and by 1831 only one whaling ship was left. Alum tells a different version of the same pattern. Thomas Challoner secretly brought alum-making expertise from the Papal States, and that helped make England self-sufficient in a material that was strategically important for medicine, leather curing, and textile dyeing. Whitby's maritime story gets even more recognizable when James Cook enters the picture. He learned seamanship there while working on coal-carrying vessels, so this wasn't some ceremonial connection added later. It was where he learned the trade. And HMS Endeavour began life in Whitby too, built there in 1764 as the collier Earl of Pembroke before the Royal Navy bought and refitted it. That link still shapes the town's identity now. You see it in Cook's statue, in the harbor itself, and in the way Whitby's twin towns include places Cook visited, like Pororua, Nuku'alofa, Anchorage, and Kauai County. It's also there in the everyday working elements that never quite left. The whalebone arch is the dramatic photo stop, but the harbor structures, shipbuilding businesses, and the RNLI lifeboat station run by unpaid volunteers remind you this is still a place with a practical relationship to the sea. Whitby's geology became its own kind of industry. Whitby jet, that deep black stone used in jewelry, is actually a mineraloid formed from compressed remains of ancient relatives of monkey puzzle trees. It had been used since the Bronze Age and mined by the Romans, but it really took off in the Victorian period after Queen Victoria adopted jet mourning jewelry following Prince Albert's death. That's a good reminder that fashion can completely transform a local resource. Jet went from regional material to exportable luxury, and then, when taste changed at the end of the 19th century, the boom faded and only a small number of shops remained, mostly serving tourists. The cliffs around Whitby are also rich in fossils, including ammonites, dinosaur footprints, crocodile remains, and a plesiosaur more than 15 feet long. So the coast isn't just pretty scenery. It helped establish Whitby as a major fossil and geological destination. What Whitby does especially well is blur the line between natural history and folklore. Local legend says, St. Hilda turned snakes to stone, which is how people explain the ammonites. Collectors even carved little heads onto ammonites to make them more appealing, which is entrepreneurial and slightly chaotic in a very human way. Those snake stones became so central to the town's identity that Whitby's coat of arms includes 3 of them, and the ammonite genus Hildoceras is named in Hilda's honor. Then there's Dracula. Bram Stoker pulled Whitby's geography and local legends into the novel, including the arrival of the Russian ship Dmitri. One interpretation says Stoker may have chosen Whitby, partly because the Synod of Whitby's old argument about calendar systems echoed the novel's interest in timekeeping and social coordination. Even if you set that aside, the Abbey ruins, the cliffs, and the harbor already do a lot of atmospheric heavy lifting. Whitby has drawn writers for centuries, including Lewis Carroll, Dickens, Wilkie Collins, Elizabeth Gaskell, A.S. Byatt, and James Russell Lowell. Later works like Shadowmancer and the Whitby Witches keep coming back to the same ingredients: Abbey, folklore, and that isolated coastal mood. Tourism really expanded once the railways arrived. The Whitby and Pickering Railway opened in 1839, later connected to York, and helped shift Whitby from a Georgian spa town into a fuller tourism destination, especially with hotel and lodging house development on the West Cliff. Then came the familiar British transport twist. Some of those links disappeared. Direct rail connections to York and Scarborough closed in the 1960s, leaving the Esk Valley Line with only a small number of daily trains to Middlesbrough. In practical terms, that means buses via York or Scarborough can actually be the faster or cheaper way south, which is not exactly the glamorous ending to a railway story. Still, even that loss got repurposed. The abandoned Scarborough line became a walking and cycling route, including the Larpool Viaduct, and the North Yorkshire Moors Railway restored seasonal steam services to Whitby, which feels very on brand for a town that knows how to turn history into lived experience. Whitby ends up feeling bigger than its size because so many different histories meet there at once. Religion, industry, exploration, geology, folklore, literature, tourism, all in one harbor town with a very good silhouette. And somehow it all fits, even the snakes that were actually ammonites. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.